What are we without our stories? Our identity is a mosaic built from 1,000 tiny pieces: a first scraped knee, the smell of a grandparent's kitchen, the sting of a first heartbreak. These pieces, these memories, they are the glue that holds us together. They tell us who we are, where we've been, and who we love. But what if, one morning, the glue dissolved? What if you woke up and all the pieces were just scattered on the floor? This isn't a thought experiment. For the 312 residents of a remote mountain village called Ethelgard, it is their reality. Music shifts slightly. A subtle, inquisitive tone enters tucked away in a valley so deep the sun only reaches the floor for a few hours a day. Ethelgard looks like a place preserved in amber. Stone cottages, a winding river, a single church spire pointing to the sky. It feels timeless. But here, time is broken. Ask anyone in the village what they did last summer, and they might show you a photograph. Ask them about their childhood, and they'll point to a name etched in a family Bible. They have evidence of a past, but no feeling of it. Because on the morning of October 7th, 9 years ago a day, they now call the blank, every single person in Ethelgard woke up with no memory of their lives before that moment. Music builds a quiet tension. Imagine it. Waking up in a bed you don't recognize, next to a person who calls you by a name that feels alien. Your own face in the mirror is the face of a stranger. The hands you use to touch it feel borrowed. Panic was the first language they all spoke. It was a silent, screaming chaos. A mother unable to recognize her own child's cry. A farmer standing in a field he had supposedly worked his entire life with no idea how to sow a seed. The outside world descended quickly. News crews, government agencies, and a flood of scientists, all trying to answer the same impossible question. How does an entire village forget? Sound of a thoughtful, academic voice, slightly filtered, as if from an interview. Dr. Eris Thorne, a neurologist who led the initial investigation, called it the most profound case of collective amnesia in recorded history. It wasn't a disease in the traditional sense, he explained to me. No virus, no pathogen. Our best theory centers on a rare, localized atmospheric event, a pocket of air trapped in the valley with an unknown neuroinhibitor. It didn't damage their brains, ... It just wiped the slate. It disconnected them from their long-term, episodic memories. The who, what, where of their own lives, gone. Music softens, becomes more human and emotional, but the science is only a footnote to the human story. After the experts left and the cameras moved on, the people of Ethelgard were left with the deafening silence of their own minds. And so they began the slow, painful work of rebuilding. They created a place they call the archive. It's the old town hall. Inside, the walls are lined with photographs, letters, diaries, home videos, anything that could serve as a clue. They became archaeologists of their own lives. A woman named Ilara spends her afternoons there. I watched her trace the face of a man in a faded photograph. This is my husband. His name is Ben. The documents say we were married for 30 years. He seems like a kind man. He brings me tea in the morning. I am learning to love him. They are not remembering. They are reintroducing themselves to their own history. Children read about their first steps in journals. Their parents no longer understand. Friendships are not rekindled. They are forged anew, based on a shared, bewildering present. But this is where the story of Ethelgard takes a turn no one expected. Because in digging through their past, they started to unearth things they didn't want to find. Music shifts again, a note of mystery and revelation. In the archive, among the wedding photos and birth certificates, they found other documents. Court records of bitter land disputes between neighbors, diaries filled with resentment and jealousy, letters detailing long-held family feuds passed down through generations. They discovered that their idyllic little village wasn't so idyllic. It was a place of secrets, of quiet grudges and silent resentments, just like any other. And the amnesia, it had wiped that all away. The old grievances were gone. The inherited hatreds, the slights, the betrayals, they vanished with the memories that created them. The man who supposedly cheated his neighbor out of land now shares his harvest with that neighbor's son, because neither of them knows they are supposed to be enemies. Sociologist Dr. Lena Petrova has called Ethelgard a forced utopia. They lost their personal histories, she says, but they also shed the weight of their collective history. By losing their past, they were freed from it. They were given a chance that no other society has ever had, a complete and total reset. Music swells, becoming profound and reflective. They stopped trying to perfectly reconstruct who they were. Instead, they began to focus on who they wanted to be. Now, kindness became their currency, patience their law. They were starting from scratch, and they chose to build something better. Ilara no longer spends as much time in the archive. I found her sitting with Ben by the river, not looking at old photos, but just watching the water flow. She told me she never recovered the feeling of being married for 30 years, but she has discovered the joy of falling in love with the kind man who brings her tea day after day. Their love isn't a memory, it's a choice they make every single morning. The story of Ethelgard asks us a haunting question. We spend our lives accumulating memories, building our identities, holding on to our past as if it's the most precious thing we own. But what if it isn't? What if the heaviest burdens we carry are the ones we can't forget? The village of Ethelgard lost everything that made them who they were, and in that empty space, they found a way to become who they always wanted to be. Maybe the purpose of memory isn't just to tell us where we've been. Maybe it's to show us what we can choose to leave behind. Music fades slowly, leaving the sound of the gentle wind from the beginning.